Today, I am sharing with you my favorite sermon. I have preached this sermon a couple of times over the years, and today I'll preach it again. It's a goodie. I talked with a pastor friend of mine one time, and I mentioned that it was many years ago, about a different time, and I was going to preach a sermon that I had preached before at another place, and he said, "Oh, preaching stale bread then, are you?" I was like, "Excuse me," and I was so surprised at how fast I responded. I said, "Fresh bread, but I know the recipe." Well, as I was preparing for this particular sermon, even though it's one that I love and know by heart now, and maybe you do too if you've heard it more than once, I say, God, I want something fresh. I want something new for this sermon. Make this sermon that is already, I think, just incredible. God gave it to me the first year of my pastoring, 15 years ago. I've been pastoring 15 years. It means a lot to me, too. I preached it to myself. It's not just about me sharing something for you. This is also for me. And God gave me something new, for a new perspective on this set of stories here. The stories that we're looking at today are found in John chapter 9 and 8, respectively. So we'll go first to chapter 9, and then we'll jump back to chapter 8. This story takes place with Jesus and his disciples walking along a roadside. And the disciples see someone off to the side who was born blind. This man born blind, and they're in Jerusalem, the old city of David, the more original section of it. And so it's a very popular place. People go there for their festivals once or twice or 3 times a year, even if they don't live in the town. So they're familiar with the place, and this person was born blind, and we imagine that he was spanging, that term I learned with working with some of my friends that have lived on the street, and they said that when you ask for spare change, they call it spanging. So the man was spanging on the corner, and probably most of his adult life, and there he was, and they saw this guy that was recognizable to the people in that area. And the disciples say, "Jesus, Rabbi, who sinned? Who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Now, don't we do the same exact thing, just in a very different situation? We might not say that about somebody who's blind, but we might say, "Oh, that person, I don't know, XYZ, well, did that happen to them? Did they get in that car accident because they sinned and the angel wasn't protecting them, and da-da-da-da-da," and we think that's a little ridiculous. But then, do we ever feel that way about ourselves? Like, "Oh, well, God will protect me because I paid my tithe this week." Or there's all sorts of things that we have floating around in our minds and our perspectives. The disciples were no different. And so the disciples, they say, "Was this man, did he sin? Or did his parents sin that he was born blind?" And Jesus says, "It was not that this man sinned or his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no man can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world." And then Jesus, the real Jesus of the Bible, does something that I didn't expect. I don't think the disciples expected it. That I don't think we just expect Jesus, the real Jesus, to do. The image of Jesus that I have in my head is this white-robed Jesus with a red sash, his hair perfectly combed. He has that he has that wonderful, panting commercial kind of hair going on. He's just no hair in a place. He's perfect. Looks just incredible, right? Perfect Jesus. Not a speck of lint or dust on him. And he's always smiling. And it's just, this is kind of easy Jesus, right? This fluffy Jesus. And sometimes we have that image in our head of Jesus on a little white lamb, right? The lamb's even kind of smiling. He's smiling. Everybody's smiling. Everyone's happy. Easy. That's Jesus. But the real Jesus of the Bible, and this is why it's so important to read the Bible for ourselves, because that Jesus sees this man born blind, and he goes, and he spits in the dust of the street. And then Jesus spits. Isn't that weird? But Jesus spit. And then after he spits, he reaches down and he picks up that spit mud and makes a bunch of nastiness. Then he reaches over to the blind man. Wipes it on the man's eyes and then says, go wash in the pool of Siloam. That's one, very messed up of Jesus. Two, unexpected. And three, why? So the man, he goes to this pool called Scent, to this place of ceremony, and he washes his face, and it says, and he could see. What? Stick that story behind one ear, okay? Move to the other story that John puts back to back with this story. In John chapter 8. In John chapter 8, just right before, and I had never connected this together, but right at the beginning of John chapter 8, the end of chapter 7, it says that the Pharisees, the priests, the religious elite ask the soldiers to go and arrest Jesus. The soldiers go to arrest Jesus, and they hear him preaching, and they're dumbfounded. They come back to the priests, empty-handed, and they say, what happened? And they said, no one ever spoke like this guy. And he said, are you all deluded too? And then they say, very interesting, verse 49. Interesting, 48, he says, they say, have any of the authorities or the Pharisees believed in him? But this crowd that doesn't know the law is accursed. That's their perspective. The religious elite, that's their perspective of the common people. That they don't know the law, therefore they're cursed. They're damned. Because they don't know. They're ignorant, they're foolish, and they're following this guy that's teaching, named Jesus. And so then in chapter 8 is this story. This story is unique when we look at the early manuscripts of the book of John. This story actually floats. It's not anchored in any particular spot until our more modern versions. But in the early versions of the Bible, this story would be in one spot and there'd be another in the Gospel of John. It's landed here. It happened. It's scripture. It just didn't have an anchor point in the early manuscripts. But here, as we have it, right after this attempted arrest of Jesus and this judgmental, accusatory statement by the religious elite of the common people that followed Jesus, then these same religious people, they bring this woman. It says, when Jesus is teaching in the temple, all the people came to him and sat down and taught him. So Jesus came and taught them. The scribes and Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery and placed her in the midst. And then they said to him, Teacher, this woman has been caught in the act of adultery now, and the law of Moses commands us that we should stone such a woman. So what do you say? First of all, what she's accused of that's an A-B conversation, right? What are they doing a part of that, right? And also, it's just the one woman that's being accused. Something's definitely wrong in this situation. The trial is not complete. And this is done in a very partial way. And Jesus, while he's teaching, the way he responds is that he doesn't respond. Instead, he just kneels down and he starts to write with his fingers on this giant etch-a-sketch of a floor of the temple, in the dust of the temple, and starts writing. He starts writing, and then he gets back up and he continues teaching. And he said, "Let those who are among you without sin be the first to cast a stone at her." And then he went down and he wrote back on the ground. And when they heard it, they went away one by one, beginning with the older ones. And Jesus was left alone with the woman standing before him. Now, we don't know what Jesus was writing. I doubt that he was writing A, B, C, D. I think it was something very profound and important, right? I mean, what could he have been writing? He could have been writing, "Thou shalt not." Right alongside adultery would be in there. But all these other sins, all these other distinctions of breaking relationship with God, of which the people accusing this woman would have seen themselves in, very surely. Could have been writing that. He could have also been writing names. Names of people that the guys holding the stones might have recognized. What's he writing there? They left. I don't know what he was writing. We're not told. But it was something that got to the heart of these people. They felt convicted, scared. Maybe even just as much as the woman that was there being accused. And they left. And then Jesus turns to this woman and says, "Woman, where are your accusers?" Says, "No one condemned you." And she says, "No one." She looks around and he goes, "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." Jesus, in this first story of this man born blind, he was not afraid to get his hands really, really dirty in order to redeem this man from something that he was born into. He didn't have a choice in this. It wasn't his parents' fault. It wasn't his fault. It was for the glory of God, Jesus said. And Jesus was not afraid to get his hands dirty for him. Maybe there's something in your life that you've had to live with. Maybe it's something that passed down from your generation to generation. Maybe it's I don't know, maybe it's a proclivity towards an addiction. Maybe it's through a certain way of communicating that's just really damaging to relationship. Maybe it's something physical in your body that just you were born with it and you had to endure it. Maybe, I don't know, XYZ, whatever it is. God is not afraid to get his hands dirty, to redeem you, to save you from that. He's not. And in the case of this woman, it proves that Jesus, at the same time, is not afraid to get his hands dirty with the things that we get ourselves into. Between these two people lie all of the things that trouble our lives, that bring us down, that make us feel like we're not worthy or capable of coming to God. And in all those things, Jesus is not afraid to get his hands dirty in order to save you. What a confident thing that lies between these two extreme stories. Jesus got his hands dirty in every way necessary in order to save them. And he does the same for us. What's sad, so sad, is that when people read this story in particular, they often will skip past all the things that Jesus says, "Neither do I condemn you, go." And they hyper-fixate on this "and sin no more" part. And it's not so much about themselves, because I think that that's an important thing. Jesus told her to do that, and we should do the same. But often I've heard this particular part quoted when talking about other people, when trying to determine how do we relate to them. And when we talk about that and someone says, but God said, go and sin no more, and to hyper-fixate on that, what orientation does that put us? What place in the story does that put us as? In the place of Jesus? No. As the person, the receiver? No. It puts us in alignment with the accusers, with the ones that had the sin, couldn't see it, and brought that woman in there wrongfully, partially, in a very unjust way and system, not caring about her dignity, not caring about the shame, not caring about anything but their own self-righteousness. And what's so sad, and something I realized when looking at this story this week, was that it would have been better if those people with those rocks had stayed. What if they had stayed? They stepped back and said, wow, I see that I'm in the same spot. What if they stood next to the woman saying, I've messed up just as much as she has, that I repent, I'm regretful. What if they stayed? What if they repented? What if they apologized? What if they allowed their hearts to become aware of their own sin just as much, more so than this woman who was forced into this situation, and they willingly stayed? What an incredible transformation of the whole community that would have been. But instead, they say, well, I don't want any of this, and they leave. You know, Jesus, and if you're still wondering, like, I don't know, Brandon's kind of going off on the fringes on this one. Look at this. Then Jesus says, right after this story, in John chapter 8, verse 12, it says, and Jesus spoke to them, saying, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. You know, when we're walking down a pathway at night, let's say, darkness all around us, we're walking with a flashlight, walking in the lamps, walking with a candle, I don't know, however you do it. There's times when we'll enter a space of darkness, maybe. Maybe we're driving down the street and we go, from one street light to another, and it gets darker, or there's a shadow, or there's stuff that happens in this life. And sometimes we'll find ourselves in darkness for a minute, but we're walking in light, but we might still miss and stub our toe. We might keep walking. And I think that paradigm, that idea, that image of what a Christian life should be, is something other than what it in reality is, because Jesus, we don't live this fluffy Jesus kind of perfection. Jesus didn't float over the ground. Jesus didn't always have his feet clean. They got dirty. He spit. He I hope he washed his hands. He was riding in the dust of that nasty floor. Like, manure was on the floor. And he rode in it. Jesus got dirty. It's reality. In our walk with God, we get dirty. And we know that Jesus, another time when he was willing to get his hands dirty, can you think of it? He kneels down at this Last Supper with his friends, his students, and they're all waiting for the servant to come. And they won't do that for each other. And Jesus, he takes off his outer garment, puts a towel around his waist, and he kneels down and starts washing their feet. His beautiful hands washing their nasty feet. And as he washes their feet, they're stunned. They're shocked. This is not a job for him. And as he washes their feet, he eventually gets to Peter. And I know that Peter has that same perspective of the fluffy Jesus and the perfect Christian life that I've had, that maybe you've had too, because he said, Jesus, you will never wash my feet. And Jesus said, if I don't wash your feet, you have no part with me. Whoa. Often we won't come to Jesus because we don't want him to wash our feet. We think, wash us, because we go, oh, no. Let me get things together. I've really messed up bad this week, so I really got to make things right before I come to Jesus. I really have to feel that repentance first. I really got to make things whatever. And so we don't go. We wait. Ellen White said that if we wait to come to Jesus, she says this in Steps to Christ, if we wait to come to Jesus, we never will. We can't get ourselves clean. We can't get ourselves ready. That is the reality of being a Christian. The reality is that he is the light of the world, and we walk by his light. And that Peter, when Jesus says, if I don't wash your feet, if I don't wash you, then you have no part with me. He goes, okay, well then wash all of me. Wash my hands and my feet and my head. Wash all of me. And Jesus goes, just your feet are dirty. Just chill, He was already clean. He had already been cleaned. When we get baptized into Jesus, that very next week, if not the very next day or that night, gonna find something coming out of your mouth and you go, whoa, I can't believe I just talked that way to the person that I love. I can't believe I just spent that time in that thing I rejected because of my love for Jesus. I can't believe, and we find ourselves in those shady areas of life. But Jesus knows it. He knows we've been cleaned by his blood, by his sacrifice, by his redemption, but sometimes our feet get dirty. And so he says, wash each other's feet. What I've done for you, you do for each other. And as Adventists, we've taken a very literal approach to that, and we've said, okay, during communion, we'll wash each other's feet, and it's a great symbol of servitude and humility. But the reality is, when we wash each other's feet, we don't, how many of you feel a little uncomfortable with the foot washing service? Just to be real about it. Like some people, they'll be like, it's communion, and they'll just jet to another church. Because it's awkward, one. Two, some people are very embarrassed about their feet. Very self-conscious. But what if somebody were to sit down in front of you during communion service, and as you take off your shoes and then your socks, and then they go, oh, look at that, how dry your feet are. Oh, what's under your nail here? Did you scrub? Look at the heels, they're all cracked. Like all these comments people could make. How embarrassing that would be. Pointing out the imperfections in your person that you probably tried to get rid of and can't. How embarrassing, how sad. What if these Pharisees, these religious elite people, instead of pointing out the problem of the masses, saying they're accursed, or instead of saying, the disciples pointing at the man by the side of the road, whose fault is it? Occupying themselves with what should happen to this woman. Instead saying, how do I wash that person's feet? How do I get into their life to be personal and safe and supportive in their cleansing process? That takes time, it takes humility, it takes all kinds of stuff that we just honestly don't want to invest ourselves in. But Jesus does. Jesus does that. He kneels down in front of the disciples and he washes their feet and he goes, just your feet are dirty. You're clean. Just your feet are got messy. Let me take care of that for you. Do this for each other. And there's one more place that I could figure out homiletically, what's the other story? Where Jesus gets his hands dirty. There's one more place in the Bible where God gets his hands dirty. If you thought of it, maybe you heard the sermon, so you already know. It's right at the beginning of this incredible book. John alludes to it in his opening, that in the beginning, God, in that space that God created, that beautiful world, perfect, ready for his children, God, he kneels down next to this riverbank, and he crafts out of the muck, the mire, the clay, the rich clay. Have you ever gotten clay stuck on your clothes? Like that stains, right? He reaches into that mud and starts massaging it, and he forms our head, our nose, our ears. I was thinking he must have had fun with our ears, right? And he forms our shoulders and our hands and our feet, all of us, and then breathes into us the breath of life, and then we become living creatures, animated dust, able to think and to do and to plan and enjoy and experience. Like, what? That's the God that created us. He got his hands dirty to make us, and he gets his hands dirty to save us. We, in fact, drive those nails into those beautiful hands. Jesus is not afraid to get his hands dirty to make us or redeem us. Why do we wait to come to Jesus, thinking we got to figure our stuff out? We just go. Just go to him. There's one more place, not necessarily in the Bible. I mean, it is, but there's one more place where God gets his hands dirty. He's not afraid to get his hands dirty. And it is, in fact, the most dirty, disgusting, repulsive, putrid place in all the universe. It is inside of our heart. Because inside of our heart, there is hatred. We harbor unforgiveness. We fester prejudice, pride. These things are disgusting. And Jesus is not afraid to get his hands dirty in our own hearts if we just ask him in. He stands at the door and knocks, and if anyone hears his voice and opens, he will come in. We don't have to get that house ready for him. That's his job. He's not afraid of it. Let him in. John was super intentional about putting these stories next to each other. We've seen that intentionality before, and that's his invitation to you by putting those stories together. Will you let Jesus reach into this heart to clean it up, to wash it, and to make it new? If that is your prayer, I'll invite you to pray alongside me as we close this time of worship. God, you are the God that loves us so much that you've created us and saved us at great expense to yourself. That you love us. And that love we've often misjudged, and we've not put it on other people when it's completely for them. God, we're asking that you, on our behalf, that you work in this heart that has so many things in it, from hurt and despair and disappointment, of mistakes made and all these things that happen in this life. You understand. You understand what's in our hearts, and God, you are the one that is redeeming us. And so we invite you in. I know some of the things in my heart, God. I probably don't know the half of it. I've forgotten the stuff that's been hidden there for so long that I don't even know what's in there. But God, you do. And I'm so relieved to know that you are willing to get your hands dirty to fix it. Redeem us, Lord, by your grace and your goodness. We place ourselves into your hands, your beautiful hands, in Jesus' name.